now. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Yaniz Padilla, as I told you a little before, and we've met too. We've talked a little bit. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I'm a licensed behavior analyst up here in outpatient department. And I've been in this field for over a decade, and my specialty is treating and evaluating severe challenging behavior. So today what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how we assess challenging behavior. So this is a part of a two-part series, the first part of a two-part series. And what we're going to do today is try to understand problem behavior. We'll discuss what problem behavior looks like, the ABCs of problem behavior, and some purposes of why problem behavior occurs. And next week, what we're going to do then is going to tackle, okay, so now that we understand the problem behavior, how do we treat it? Okay, so I really like for everybody to be interactive in the workshops I give. So I gave everybody a handout. So typically when folks come to these talks, they have a specific child in mind. I'm guessing that you have a specific child in mind? Yes. Okay. And typically families have a specific problem behavior that they have in mind when they're coming in. Do you have a specific kind of challenging behavior that you're thinking about? Or behaviors?
Yeah, like the throwing and hitting.
Okay. So I want you guys to keep those problem behaviors in mind as we go along, because we're kind of going to dissect them. I know that as a parent, problem behavior is extremely emotional, especially when it happens in the community. If you have a child that's throwing a tantrum in the store, if you have a child that is, hitting you at church, it is very hard to look at it objectively. And, in the moment, you just get really emotional. So what I'm trying to do with this talk is try to give you some tools to be more like a scientist and look at things a little bit more objectively and try to understand the behavior so that you can feel more empowered and feel that you know what you need to do instead of kind of desperate and frustrated, which is kind of where we go, when we don't understand it. So everybody has a data sheet. Folks online that are listening to this, there's a data sheet on the website as well, so that you can kind of dissect your own child's behavior as we go along. And as we go along, I'll let you know when to start entering the different pieces of information. Okay? Do you have a specific kid in mind too that you're thinking about?
Sure.
Yeah, come up with a kid that you know, even if it's a sibling or somebody that has had it doesn't have to be a child diagnosed with ASD, just so that you can kind of also go through the process of dissecting the behavior.
So this helps like with the siblings that have to deal with it as well, right?
Oh yeah, these principles of behavior are the same no matter your diagnosis. Today some of the examples are specific for autism, but this works, I've worked in this field for many years with kids that are typically developing, adults that are typically developing, and also children and adults with developmental disabilities. So this works with all of your kids. So an interesting thing about problem behavior, or calling a behavior a problem, is that it's very subjective. So something doesn't become a problem until someone, either the person or someone else, calls it a problem or a challenge, right? So for example, in this cartoon, the family says, "Where did we go wrong?" when the child says, "TV's boring, I want to read." So for that family, that the child wants to read instead of watch TV is a problem. And for another family, that would be great. Well, the child wants to read. So same thing with autism spectrum disorders. For a family, for example, if a family is super into football, but their child doesn't really like group sports, and they're being non-compliant and being part of a team, that may be a very big problem for one family, and it may be totally fine and a preference for another family. So it really depends on the context and who's looking at the behavior. So basically, problem behavior is very subjective. So we can't just because we see something, we can't just, oh, it's problem behavior. We have to evaluate a little bit more deeply. So some of the things I look at to determine, is this behavior a problem, and does it warrant that we treat it? So I put a few variables here that I look at to see, do we really need to treat this behavior? The first thing is the behavior impairing the person's functioning in the important parts of their life? So is the behavior impairing their social relationships, their ability to learn, their basic needs? So, for example, if a child with autism really likes lining up toys, but whenever you tell him, okay, it's time to get dressed, he goes happily to get dressed, then it's not really impacting the daily living, right? But if a child lines up toys so much so that he's not engaging in any learning activities, he's not engaging with the family, he's not sitting down for dinner, then that may be something that we may want to address so that the child participates a little bit more in his community. Another thing is, where is the behavior occurring, right? So for example, a child may love to run around inside of his house, and that may be okay. But what about if he likes to run around in the street when you're walking around to the store? That's a major problem. So you have to, take into consideration the context and where the behavior is occurring. And then some behaviors don't negatively affect the child, but they may negatively impact other people. So if a child's in school and he's like tapping on the table repeatedly, that may help him concentrate, but all his friends around him get really distracted. So that behavior is not impacting the child or the family, but really it's impacting the whole classroom. So one example that I get a lot is if you have a living room and the child really just wants to watch one show over and over again, then the whole family can't sit down and watch a TV together. And sometimes it's nice at the end of the day to watch a movie together as a family. So that is, the child's happy that he can see his movie and repeat, but it's impacting the family. So that's what we go through to kind of identify, is this a problem? Once we identify that it's a problem, now we have to determine to what level do we need to intervene. So you have siblings, right? Or you have various kids. So you know that there's sibling rivalry and kids sometimes hit each other. So all kids at some point have something that may be called problem behavior, right? And adults too. Now to the degree that occurs, that's when we have to determine, do we need to intervene with some serious assessment and more kind of empirically validated treatments, or can I just tell my child, we don't fight with our siblings, if you do that, you can't have dessert, something simple that every parent could do, and that'll go away. So for me, the most important thing is increasing the family's quality of life, and that includes implementing the most simple treatment possible. So if telling the child, oh, don't do that, that's not what we do, works, why are we going to put a token economy in place, or any jar, or any complication? You just don't want to add stress to the family. So simple is best. Okay, so what does problem behavior look like? Because problem behavior is so subjective, it can look many, many different ways. And let's look at a list here of typical, referral concerns. So tantrums, self-injurious behavior, aggression, property destruction, refusal, all of these are typical things that parents come in saying that their children are engaging in. So a very important part of behavior analysis is not just saying one word for these behaviors, but defining them really clearly so that everybody in the home and in their team knows exactly what we're talking about, okay? Because what could be a tantrum for somebody may not be a tantrum for somebody else, right? So, for example, instead of saying the child tantrums, we can say the child has loud vocalizations and also has stomping on the floor, falling to the ground for more than 10 seconds. So now everybody that is working with the child knows, okay, so this is what this looks like, right? For one parent, a tantrum may be just screaming one time. For another parent, is like, oh, that was just he just screamed for 10 minutes. That's not really a tantrum. But now we have a clear understanding of what it looks like. So can one of you guys give me an example of any of these other ones? Like self-injury, aggression, property destruction, of what that looks like for you, or what have you seen it look like?
For property destruction, like if we call him little man, like if he gets like upset about something, like if he wants something that he can't have or something,
Yeah.
He'll sit there and like say like if he was in here, he'll just pull all of this, like throw the computer,
swiping things and throwing things. Okay, so I'm going to repeat what you said because they said that we couldn't hear. So one mom is saying that for property destruction, throwing things, swiping things off the table, that's kind of what it looks like for her child. Yeah, that's a very typical one. But
so
then,
like, you know where like the TV stand is and stuff is right there, like
right,
like the maybe game system, cable box, whatever's
pulling them.
And pulling like cords and stuff.
And then for another family, for example, I have families that the favorite property destruction is a stomping on things. So for that family, it's not so much swiping and throwing, it's stomping on items. So you really have to look at the definition based on the specific child. Like there's no one set definition. It really has to be specific. Well, let me go back to this and just, for self-injurious behavior, some of the typical ones I've seen could be hitting head or hitting your head with your fist, head banging, things like that. But I've also seen biting self, scratching yourself until you bleed and things like that. For aggression, it could be anywhere from hitting to biting to throwing items at a person. But some families consider aggression just grabbing. So we have to be really careful that we're sensitive to what the family considers a problem and aggressive. So for some families, just like a threat of aggression is aggression.
Yeah.
Work refusal and noncompliance. For some families, just sitting there and not paying attention to your homework is noncompliance. And for some families, it means leaving and bolting the room and screaming no. So it's very important that we define them clearly. So the first thing I want you guys, go ahead.
Like with little man, because he's nonverbal, like with it, like what I would use for that definition for him is like if he does get upset about something and I ask him to do something, he like just won't do it. Is that the same thing?
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
So there's no wrong definition.
Okay.
It's like your own definition is the right one for your child.
Okay.
So if you feel that non-compliance for little man is just not refusing to do something but not having to say anything because he's non-vocal, then that's what we would define as, we'd say non-compliance, and that looks like as refusal by turning away or things like that. So we'd look at what he does and kind of write a really specific definition. But it's all very individualized. So what I want you guys to do now is the first part of your data sheet. So think of one of the behaviors that you're concerned about and try to write a very clear definition so that when you talk to somebody else, they can almost see it and they can, say, like they know what you're talking about. So go ahead and do that. I'll give you guys a minute to fill that out. And also write down why do you feel that it's a problem. So we talked about, why different problem behaviors become problems for different families. So how intense it is, how it is affecting the quality of life, how it's affecting others. And then when you're done kind of filling it out, just raise your head so I can keep going. I think we have somebody else joining us on GoToMeeting. If you're just joining us on GoToMeeting, right now we're filling out the data sheet on your own child's behaviors of concern. So you should be writing down like a clear definition of the behavior that you're most concerned about, and then writing down why you feel it's a problem. And we're gonna move on now, but please, as you join us, just jot down your child's behavior concerns. Okay, so what behavior, does anybody want to talk about the behavior that they wrote down?
I had more than one, but I put one
Yeah.
for now.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I didn't know if we were supposed to do more than one or just one.
Just one's good for today. It's just.
I kind of write big, so I couldn't fit everything
That's okay.
on. But I put aggression.
Okay.
And I put throwing items at others, scratching, constant hitting others in face, arms, or whatever, and pulling hair.
Perfect. So she wrote aggression, hitting others, throwing items against others, scratching, and pulling hair. So that's really explicit. That's really good. Okay. So now that we kind of defined you guys' problem behavior and everybody online too, now we can talk a little bit about, so what influences these problem behaviors? So behavior does not occur in a vacuum. Things that occur before, immediately before or a long time before, and things that occur afterwards impact if the behavior is likely to occur in the future or if it's not going to occur in the future, okay? So that's what we're going to talk about for the rest of the time. This concept, the behavior analysts call it the ABCs of behavior. So we're going to go through this step by step. Has anybody heard of the ABCs of behavior? Yeah, okay. So the A stands for antecedent, and antecedent just means occurring before. So something that occurs before the behavior happens. A very useful way to think about antecedents in relation to problem behavior is that they're like triggers. So the antecedents trigger a certain behavior. So if the phone rings, that's a trigger typically for us to pick it up. A teacher provides an instruction. Hopefully that's a trigger for a child to follow the instruction, or not. If a parent says no at the candy store, that may be a trigger for a tantrum. If you turn off the video game, that may be a trigger for hitting. So if we start thinking about the antecedents as triggers, it makes it a little easier. So sometimes antecedents are not clear. Sometimes they're very clear. The child wants something, you say no, problem behavior. But sometimes there's things that are imperceptible to us. For example, a child is engaging in some problem behavior because his homework page is wrinkled, and he can't tell you that the homework page is wrinkled. So that's an antecedent that is not so clear, but that may still impact the problem behavior. There's also antecedents that occur a long time before. So if you're a teacher working with a child, you won't know. For example, if that same child didn't have breakfast, so the child's hungry, and in addition, now his homework page is wrinkled, so that in combination just results in problem behavior. So some of these things that happen a long time before, or biological events, like they're not feeling well, we call setting events. Okay? So that's why we really have to be careful about making sure that we know what's going on with the child. Have they eaten? Are they sleeping? Do they have headaches? Do they have allergies? Because all these things can set the occasion for other antecedents becoming triggers for problem behavior. So sometimes parents say, well, he doesn't do it always, just sometimes when I tell him to do this, he has aggression. And then I start thinking about those setting events. So what's changing from one day to the next? Does that make sense? So the B of the ABCs is behavior, and so we know that. Like what I just told you, the answering the phone, taking out the school book, yelling, screaming, and the behavior should be something that we really can measure very well so that we know when we're actually making improvement. One important thing to know is that the same behavior can sometimes be triggered by multiple different antecedents or triggers. So a child may hit his head when you tell him to turn off the video game, when he has to use the bathroom, with the teacher instruction. So multiple different antecedents can trigger the same behavior. Okay. So consequences. So the C of ABC stands for consequences, and this is actually one of the most important, or if not the most important piece of the ABCs. So the consequences that occur after a behavior will indicate whether the behavior will occur more, will occur at the same rate, or will stop occurring in the future. So for example, in this example, if you looked at the phone's ring and you see it's a block number, and you pick it up and it's a telemarketer, next time you're less likely to pick up the phone when the phone's, unless you like talking to telemarketer. I'm assuming nobody likes to talk to telemarketers. But, so if the phone rings and it's a block number, you're less likely to pick it up. So that consequence of the telemarketer calling is what impacted the behavior. Nothing has changed in the A and B, right? So the consequence, that's what changed your behavior. And that's what we're going to talk about a lot more now. So consequences can be planned or can be unplanned. And it doesn't matter if they're planned or unplanned, they do impact behavior, or they can impact behavior. So you may have a great consequence for not picking up the toys. You may have a timeout consequence. And that's something that you plan, right? But if sister's laughing every time that the child's having problem behavior when they're not picking up the toys, that's an unplanned consequence. You're not controlling it, but that consequence may impact that child's behavior. Does that make sense? So that's why we have to be really aware of what's happening after and try to control as much of it as we can if we want to change behavior. This happens a lot in schools where the teacher has like a point system and all this thing, but if a child really loves attention and he's making funny faces and all his classmates are laughing, he may continue making funny faces even though his teacher has the best point system ever. So those unplanned consequences really can affect your treatments. So another important thing is that we should not ever treat a behavior by just looking at the A and B. So, for example, in these three examples, the antecedent's the same. There's a math task. The behavior looks the same. And if we just look at that, we would treat it exactly the same way. Oh, these three kids don't like math. They're refusing. Let's put the same intervention in place. Perfect. However, if you look more deeply, one child, if you look at what's happening after the problem behavior, one child is getting, his neighbor is laughing every time that he's refusing. The second child, the teacher is sending him to the principal's office, so he gets to get out of work. And then the third child, the teacher gives him like something to chew on to calm down, or just a toy or something a fidget to calm down. So if these consequences are what's maintaining those behaviors, these treatments would be completely different, because one child's engaging in refusal to get social attention, one to get out of work, and one to get that toy that the teacher gives them. So the treatments would be very different, right? So we've been talking about consequences, and basically you can fit consequences in two aspects, either reinforcement or punishment, or two categories. When something follows a behavior that increases the likelihood of that behavior occurring, we call it reinforcement. And when something happens after a behavior that decreases the likelihood of that behavior occurring, we call it punishment. Okay. So it's important to note that just because we intend for something to be a reinforcer or a punisher doesn't mean that it is a reinforcer or a punishment. So the only way that we label something a reinforcer or a punisher is when we see how it affects the behavior. Okay? So for example, if we tell a child to pick up a toy, he picks up the toys, and we give him a sticker. If the child's picking up the toy behavior increases, that's a reinforcer. If there's no change, then the stickers are not a reinforcer. So you can't call something reinforcing until you show that, he really will work for that. That same child, maybe if you give him a little edible every time that he picks up the toys, now his cleaning behavior is increasing. So then that's reinforcing. So you kind of have to know what's reinforcing for your own child. The same thing occurs with punishment. So what typically in the school system, what happens when a child blurts out or is being inappropriate in the class? They get sent to the principal's office. For some kids, that may increase the behavior of blurting out instead of decrease it, because maybe they get the principal's attention, they really like the guy, or maybe they get out of being in a really loud environment that they don't like and they get a little break. And for some kids, being pulled out of class, it's very aversive and it will decrease the blurting out. So only for those kids that being sent to the principal's office decreases the blurting out is that a punishment. For the other kids, it's actually a reinforcer. So you just reinforce their blurting out behavior. So I see a lot in schools that they continue doing the same treatments that they feel should work, but they're not looking as much as what the child's behavior is doing after the intervention. And the principle is just a standard one. Okay, so now I would like now that we talked about the ABCs of behavior, I want to pause here for a few minutes, and then I want you to think of the last time that your child had the behavior that you just defined. And so think about, maybe it was yesterday, it was 2 weeks ago, I'm not sure, and write down what happened before, what the behavior looked like, and if you already defined it, just write aggression or whatever it is, and what happened after. So just jot that down. I'll give you a minute. Nothing very complicated, just what happened before, what happened afterwards.
In these boxes?
Yeah, right underneath. So underneath the A, write down what happened before, I have an example here. And then on the behavior, what he did, and then on the consequence, what you did or what happened after. I also have two other boxes there that you can ignore, or if you have more information, like the setting events we were talking about, like was there anything biological going on, had he not slept, and things like that. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll go through the next section, and then at the end, I'll give you an opportunity to talk about the ABCs. I'll also give you an opportunity to change or add more to your example as we go along. Okay. So now that we've talked a little bit about the ABCs, the last concept that I wanted to discuss with you guys is the function of behavior, or why behavior occurs. So the purpose of the behavior. That's what all behavior analysts are looking for is, so why is this behavior occurring so that we can treat it? So most behavior, all of our behavior, our kids' behaviors, our clients' behaviors, be it a desirable behavior or an undesirable behavior, occurs either to gain something or escape something. On the gain side, we can engage in behavior to gain access to attention, so other people's attention, or to gain access to tangible items such as food, toys, preferred activities, paychecks, things like that, or gain access to stimulation. On the escape side, again, we could engage in problem behavior or appropriate behavior, any behavior to escape social attention, like with a telemarketer, escape non-preferred activities, or escape certain stimulations. So we'll go through all these in detail. So as I go through these main kind of functions of problem behavior, I'd like you to look at your example and kind of jot down notes on the consequence side in particular. If you feel that you missed anything that could have potentially reinforced the behavior in the past. So an important piece of this is, remember that even though someone may be trying to implement a consequence right now, for example, the teacher may be trying to ignore the problem behavior now, the consequence of attending to it or giving attention 2 weeks ago may also be influencing the behavior. So it's not just one-time consequences, all the consequences that have occurred after that behavior happened. So think about that a little bit. Okay, so I like using cartoons to explain functions. So one of the functions of problem behavior is to gain social attention. For example, we'd like for children to raise their hands to get their teacher's attention, right? Another child, though, may, like we've talked about, make funny faces to get the teacher or peers' attention. And the reaction of peers and the adults may advertently or inadvertently like influence the likelihood of that behavior occurring in the future. Something really important that parents sometimes don't realize is that like negative attention or reprimands or discussion or arguments, that's all attention. So if you're trying to negotiate with your child when the behavior is occurring, or you're trying to rationalize or reprimand, all of that's attention, and all that can fuel the problem behavior. Um, so for example, in this cartoon here, Toby there is snorting. He probably is just snorting because there's something stuck in his nose. But Dad says, "Say, Toby, Daddy finds that sound really annoying." So Toby just snores more. So clearly that reprimand did not work, or the explanation, it actually increased the behavior. Do you guys have any questions about social attention before we move on? Okay. So one of the really clear ones and the kind of standard one is the tangible function. Basically, you engage in behavior to get access to tangible items, which are just things that you can touch and feel. These could be food, toys, like I said, money, preferred activities, all sorts of things. Like we all of us, we engage in behavior to gain access to different tangibles like food, our paychecks, and things like that. For example, if a child is consistently given a specific snack when he's upset, he may learn that if he becomes upset in tantrums, mom will bring him a snack. Or same thing with, we talked about the little fidget toy in school. So if a child learns that if he's getting really upset and screams, the teacher brings him a fidget toy, and he really likes that fidget toy, he may probably keep having the problem behavior to get the fidget toy, even though the teacher thinks that, oh, it's calming him down. It's calming him down, but it's more likely that he'll have problem behavior in the future to get access to that fidget toy. So the behavior that for me is the most typical, or the function that's the most typical when I have seen kids in the past, has been the escape or avoidance function. So for example, we may drive the speed limit, right, to avoid getting a speeding ticket. So that's the avoidance function. Same way a child may act out in class to escape a non-preferred activity. And for example, if you send a child to timeout when he's engaging in problem behavior in the class, that means that the child got a break. So he's like, oh, great, I got escape from this task. I'm more likely to have tantrum to get timeout in the future. So escape is a really varied function. It's the standard one is, schoolwork or homework. But I've treated children that have an escape function for multiple things, like crowded spaces, loud noises. So I worked with a child who scratched her face for us to turn off music and things like that. Any daily living activities that are aversive, like brushing teeth, using the bathroom, sometimes escaping particular people. So there's, and we all do that, right? We're walking down the hallway and maybe there's somebody that's not as pleasant to us and we walk a different way. That's just reinforced by escaping social attention. So this function is just really interesting to me. So then the final function that we're going to talk about today is automatic or sensory reinforcement. So automatic reinforcement provides some sort of sensory stimulation, right? One example is of positive or gaining sensory stimulation is coffee. So I drink coffee and I get a little jolt of energy, right? But for some kids with autism, not all, but for some of the sensory, some of the self-stimulatory behaviors can be maintained by gaining sensory stimulation, right? Not all of them. And some children also, self-injurious behavior can sometimes be maintained by gaining sensory stimulation. it is very important to note that this is not always the case. So we shouldn't assume that just because a child's engaging in hand flapping or head hitting that there's no social function, that it's just sensory. Okay. The second piece of automatic reinforcement is escaping sensory stimulation. So what do we do when we have a migraine? We take a medicine, to take some pills to escape that sensory feeling, right? It is sometimes very difficult with kids to tell whether there's a sensory escape function. But for example, if a child has severe sinus allergies and they're like hitting their head, that may help them relieve that feeling. Or if they have a headache and they're like pressing their head, that may help them relieve their pain. So with escaping sensory stimulation, it's really important that we're very aware of the biology of the child, their health. Are they having allergies? Like it is very difficult to evaluate, but it's really important because we don't want our kids to be engaging in severe self-injury. If by giving them a Tylenol, we can alleviate that, or putting really complicated treatments in place when all they needed was just a little bit of medication. So, so why do we need to know the purpose of behavior? This cartoon here, this Peanuts cartoon, basically exemplifies why we need to know the function. So here Lucy's saying, let me see how I can put it into words. What I mean is, what I want to say, and then in the third panel she ends up hitting Linus and he says, right, rats. I was hoping she could put it into words. So this is why, right? So she couldn't come up with a functional, adaptive way to tell Linus what she wanted, so she engaged in some aggression. So basically the reason that we want to know the function of problem behavior is so that we could replace those problem behaviors with more adaptive and acceptable replacement behaviors. We do want our kids to get what they want. This is not about not letting them have what they need and what they want. It's about teaching them better ways to get access to that. So if your child wants to get out of, toothbrushing, we can teach them how to withstand a little bit of toothbrushing before they can take a break, right? And then say, oh, I need a break from toothbrushing. Okay, let's take a break. And then come back to it, brush a little bit. I need a break. Okay, good. Instead of, wrestling and hitting and spitting and all sorts of things. So once we know the function of behavior, we can develop those effective behavior plans. If not, we're basically shooting in the dark. So if we're saying, oh, this child's aggressive, we don't know the function, we tried timeout, we tried tokens, we tried this, we tried that, we may lose a lot of time in which the child may be gaining communication skills, adaptive skills, by just throwing anything at them in terms of treatment. And we may be losing priceless time where they could be learning. Okay, so let me see what time it is. We still have a little bit of time, so that's good. So we can practice the ABCs a little bit. We'll go through a few examples that I have, and then we can go through you guys' examples, okay? So let's look at this example here. Look at this cartoon. Look at the tiger of Hobbes' behavior and try to think about what are the antecedents to Hobbes' behavior and the consequences to his growling. So I'm going to let you guys look at that for a second. So what's Hobbes' behavior? The tiger, what's the problem behavior?
He's not getting enough attention.
His
Like he wanted him to keep on.
Well, that's the function.
Okay.
You're jumping ahead. So here.
He's growling and being scary.
That's right.
Okay.
So the behavior is that he's growling at Calvin. What happened before the behavior is that Calvin walked away after having given him a little scratch.
Okay.
And the consequence is that, right, Calvin came back and rubbed his belly. So is he more likely to growl at Calvin in the future to get access to it or not? Probably. So basically the growling just basically served him to get attention. If Calvin had kept walking away, then next time Hobbs may have tried, hey Calvin, can I have a back rub? Instead. Okay, so let's try another one. I'll have you read this one, or I'll read it out loud and then we'll kind of dissect it. Billy and his brother are playing outside in their sandbox. Billy's brother takes the shovel he's using. Billy hits his brother and pushes him away. His brother runs to their mother, leaving the shovel behind, and Billy continues to play on his own. So what's the problem behavior that Billy had? Yeah, Billy hit his brother and pushed him away. So what happened? What triggered that? What was the antecedent?
He took something.
He took the shovel, and the consequence?
He gets to play by himself.
He got the shovel back. The little brother dropped the shovel, and he was able to get it back. So basically, pushing him served. Okay, I pushed you. I get my shovel back. That's how he get that done. If his brother had taken the shovel with him and cried to his mom, then he realized that, oh, I don't get the shovel if I hit my brother. So that's good. I think I have one more. Yeah. So Carl's mother tells him it is time to get dressed for school. Carl begins to yell and hit himself. Carl's mother follows through with their request, helps him to get dressed, and drives him to school. So what's Carl's problem behavior?
Yelling.
Right. And what triggered that behavior?
Him having to get ready for school.
Yeah, that's a very typical one. So what consequence did the mother deliver?
She helped him get dressed.
Yeah, he could not get out of that. So that's perfect. So he was told to get ready to go to school. He yelled and hit himself, and his mother still made him get dressed and go to school. So if his mother does this a few more times, is it more likely or less likely that he'll keep yelling and hitting himself? Less, probably. If the function is to escape going to school, and his mother still makes him go to school even if he's yelling and crying, it's probably likely that he's going to stop. Sometimes this takes a while. We're going to talk about this next week. It's not as simple as, oh, let me put this consequence in place one time. It takes a long time. But yeah, in this case, he's more likely to probably stop and getting the problem behavior, where in this one, Billy is probably more likely to hit his brother next time he takes something away because he knows that he can get it back, right? So let's talk about your examples and see if we can dissect a little bit of the last time that your child had problem behavior. And see if we can identify a function or at least antecedents and the consequences, and see if we can predict what's going to happen in the future. Who wants to go?
I picked this one, but I don't know if,
Give it a shot, and then
I should have put that on there. His bus was a little bit late getting home.
So his bus was a little late coming home. That's an
Yeah.
antecedent. Mm-hmm.
And usually, like, if it's like a hot day, we'll get them some off the ice cream truck.
Okay.
So that's what happened yesterday. But when his bus came and he was getting off and coming across the street, the ice cream truck was already leaving out. So
Okay.
we basically missed it.
So he came home from school. Part of the routine is that on hot days he gets ice cream. His bus was late. so he couldn't get ice cream. So that's all, it's all antecedent, setting
Okay.
events and antecedent. So what did he do?
He started hitting Dad because he was on his shoulder, so he started hitting him.
He started hitting Dad?
Yeah, so.
And what did Dad do?
He just kept talking to him and put him down, and then I gave all the kids a thing of fruit snacks because I didn't have no freezer pops or nothing.
Okay.
So
that's a tricky one because
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So Dad gave him some attention because he was talking to him, and then also he got fruit snacks. So if fruit snacks or attention are reinforcing, so if next time that he misses the bus or the truck, the ice cream truck, you see the same behavior, then you know that either Dad's attention or the fruit snacks reinforce that behavior,
Yeah.
right?
But he was
You won't
still
know.
hitting him when he was talking to him, so.
So maybe that didn't do it.
So I gave them the fruit snacks and
Did he calm down with the fruit snacks?
yeah, and then I gave them like a different snack, but it
So-
wasn't ice cream, but he
Right.
was alright.
But he still got something to eat. So maybe the
Yeah.
fruit snacks did reinforce the tantrum. So in that case, you'll have to look at next time. If it happens again, then you know that giving him fruit snacks increased the potential of aggression. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
And next week we'll talk about how to treat that.
yeah.
It's a good example. Do you want to go through one too?
Well, I know my son is sort of good between the non-compliance, the tantrum,
Yeah.
but I know that, the transition period, he was getting ready for bed. And he
Okay,
tries
so this is a transition period, getting ready for bed.
Yeah, he tries to rationalize, that it's not time, we use a timer,
Okay.
we're trying to, he's got his token system, he's like, we're gonna pull tokens if you don't.
So the behavior, I'm just saying it because they can't hear it. The behavior is rationalizing and non-compliance and kind of delaying. Yep. And then what's the consequence?
Tokens pulled, if, he's not following, and then he talks, like, I'm sorry, if tokens are pulled, he tries to explain why tokens shouldn't be pulled at that time, and such said.
Right.
This token is pulled for this behavior.
So then the consequences are taking off tokens because they have a nice token system in place. But then he starts talking about why the tokens were pulled and why they shouldn't be pulled and all this stuff. So what do you think the function is? Like, why do you think he has the arguments at bedtime?
He has a hard time going to bed.
So
He wants to stall.
So he just wants to stall. Okay, so it sounds like an escape. It could be escaping the bedtime routine. Based on what you're telling me, so he's getting loss of tokens, so loss of tangibles, and he's also getting a little bit of attention, like discussion.
Right.
It just prolonged the bedtime.
But then it's also escaping the bedtime.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
But then we can't tell which one of those may be reinforcing it. So he may want to escape bedtime, but he may also want the discussion, right? So he may want the discussion and the delay. He may want, it doesn't seem like the token removal is punishing that behavior too well. Is that the case?
Yeah, he likes to try to rationale. So like if it's something that I guess he can get out of, explain that.
Right.
Well, I was told this, and he's got a good memory, so he can say, such and such said this, and I'm like, well, but you're not complying, or you're
Right.
So this is what happens.
So in that case, for me, it's based on the consequence. It could be, and the antecedent, it could be escape or it could be attention. Because when you go to bed, you also lose all attention for the day. You can't have any more discussions when you go to bed. So basically, going to bed is maybe something he doesn't want to do, plus he loses all potential of discussion. So it may be kind of a combination of escape attention there, and then if you guys discuss it with him and also delay bedtime, it may just be reinforcing it. So that's also a really good example that happens a lot. So those are really good examples. Do you guys want to discuss any other examples? This is all I have for today, and we have like 4 minutes left if you want to chat about or want to dissect another context. Next week we'll talk about treating both of these. I'm excited. Are you guys coming back next week?
Yes.
Okay. So we can kind of go through what treatments would work and how to test those and how to evaluate if they're working and things like that.
See, with Lopan, he's not talking, so when we have the bedtime problems too, but I usually, it still takes time though, because, I don't have any TV on or anything, and I stay in the room with him until he goes to sleep. Even when he tries to get up, I just grab him and put him back in the bed. It's just a process, but it still prolongs him going to bed when he's supposed to, though.
Okay.
But,
so with that, it's the same situation as the other one.
Yeah.
Is it escape from the bed, or is it access to mom's attention? We kind of have to tease that up. It could be a combination of both, which is the double whammy of escape attention is very difficult. It's one of the most difficult combinations to treat because you want to tell them that they have to keep doing the thing, but if they also are reinforced by your attention and you're making them do the thing, you're giving them attention. So it's very challenging to have neutral attention, follow through with the demand, and then also reinforce with more enthusiastic attention when they're being compliant. So that is a highly tricky function. And bedtime is like prime example, especially everybody's tired too, like including you guys. So it's hard to wait, what's the treatment again? Just go to bed. So I'll put in a little bit of bedtime for next week. I'll add a little bit of bedtime examples so that we can talk about that.
It's just some as well, like just even getting kids to go to school, so if they act like they don't feel well, and you're not sure if they don't feel well. But
going to school is the same situation, and there's for both of those there's time constraints on the parents, right? So for the morning, the bus is coming or school starting, so parents also don't have all the time in the world, and the kids know that, right? So they know that it's kind of rushed and we have to get this done and this just has to happen. And then at night, same thing. Everybody needs to go to bed because everybody needs to get a good amount of sleep. So that added time pressure really impacts being able to do the treatments well because you just want to go through it and forget it. Let's get it done. So typically when I work on morning routines or nighttime routines, I have parents work on them on the weekends first to take that kind of stress off. And that if you have to put them in the bed 30 times, then you can do that without thinking, oh my gosh, I have to wake up for work at 5 a.m. So I'm getting ahead of myself for next week. Well, that's all I have for today, you guys. I hope you come next week. Okay. Should I hit stop though?
No, that's what I did last time.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I won't do anything so that it actually records. Last time they lost the recording.
We lost it. Let me go. Oh, you lost it.
Yeah, tell them to come over. So I have to go have a little bit of quick lunch so then I can go to your house.
Are we all good?
I didn't touch it.
Okay.
Are you sure?